Welcome back to Sports Picks World Cup review and preview, here being broadcast on Sports Wars here on YouTube. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll be sharing picks and conversation about the World Cup games with open live chats during some of the big games throughout the rest of the World Cup at sportspicks.locals.com. It has been a wild first 20 games or so through the World Cup. You might look at the final scores and think it's been full of extraordinary upsets of low-scoring games. Two-thirds of the games have gone under the expected total. Usually they set these at 2.5 because about half the games go under that, half the games go over that, both in World Cup history and in a lot of high-end club play throughout club performances across the globe, really. And two-thirds of those have gone 2 goals or fewer. But it is not for lack of opportunities. If you look at expected goal metrics, you look at other offensive heat map charts or things of that nature that various analytics followers follow, it's actually been an above-average offensive opportunities kind of World Cup. That, in fact, two-thirds of the game should have gone over rather than under. It's a reminder of the power of luck in a game with so few scoring opportunities and so few goals in general. In the same vein, we've had 9 games where one team outperformed the other by at least one expected goal edge or more. In 2018, the World Cup, where there were 22 first-round games during the round-robin stage where that took place, and the team that had an expected goal edge of 1 goal or more won 19 of those 22, only drawing 3, losing none. Not so much this cup. In this cup, there have been 9 such games, so a little bit less than normal, but we might catch up in the latter part of the latter 2/3 or so of the games to come. But of those 5, only 5 have won outright. 3 have lost outright. 1 has drawn. The 3 that lost included the biggest upset in the history of the World Cup, whether measured by ratings, whether measured by odds, whether measured by a range of metrics, but including the on-field metrics. On field, Argentina would typically, according to expected goal metrics, have won that game by 2 goals or more, would have won that game more than 90% of the time on average. But they lost. It was one of those games where luck showed to the Saudis' favor, and they ended up declaring a national holiday the day later after beating Lionel Messi. Yeah. It was a game to remind you of how luck can play a role. For example, the goalkeeper for the Saudis was often in the wrong position, but the Argentinians were assuming he'd be in the right position. And so that when they kept trying to reverse it to the other side of the post and a lot of their headers and shots, he was right in the middle. He shouldn't have been there, but he was, and it was good for the Saudis that he was. Mm-hmm. The Saudis loved to slide tackle. That led to a large number of fouls outside the box, but quite extraordinarily, it led to no fouls inside the box. They had like 14 successful slide tackles in the penalty box. Not what you'd be teaching your 6-year-old at home for soccer, but it worked for the Saudis. So credit to them. Maybe it is Allah Akbar at this Mideast hosted World Cup. But it's been a lot of fun games, interesting games. The U.S. has really overachieved for the most part. Great first half against Wales, struggled a bit in the second half. Great both halves against England. A deserved draw, if anything, U.S. slightly better, according to most expected goal metrics, than the mighty 3 Lions, who had that dominating performance against Iran because 2 defensive-oriented teams decided to say screw it and ran at each other the whole game. Didn't help the Iranians because the talent differential is quite big there. Though, again, from an expected goal performance perspective, Argentina outperformed the Saudis. Canadians outperformed the Belgians more than England outperformed the Iranians. And, of course, the Iranians got their revenge with 11 minutes of extra time, managed to score not once, but twice, more than 8 minutes into extra time in the game. So a little bit tough on the Red Dragons there, who now need a heroic performance against the English to advance. Those are just some overarching themes from the tournament. We're seeing the power and potency of luck, sometimes to the detriment of my betting bankroll so far, but maybe the gambling gods will be a little bit more like Frank Sinatra's Lady Luck, be a lady, rather than treat me like I'm Johnny Depp and Lady Luck is Amber Heard on a bad day. So we'll see how that rolls out. But what are some of your overarching thoughts from the tournament so far, Gordon?
Well, so I agree. We wondered last time if the timing of this tournament might affect the play. And I really do wonder, teams like Denmark and Croatia had a hard time finishing. They had great opportunities and they couldn't put it in the back of the net. And as you pointed out, a lot of teams have had really high, relatively high expected goals, but just couldn't finish. I wonder if the timing of this tournament is playing a role in that. Perhaps you definitely see nerves, you see jitters in some games, and you see a lack of chemistry in some games that's a little bit surprising. And I wonder if players coming straight from their leagues, straight from club play to play with the national team has made it harder to adjust. So I wonder if that explains some of these anomalies. And in some cases, I feel like you can even see the teams that have played twice now, or even within a single game, a single team sometimes will be much more settled in the second half and sort of ease into their game. So I wonder if the timing of this tournament has affected that somewhat. There also have been some ingenious managerial decisions. So when Saudi Arabia decided to run the offside trap against Argentina, especially given the new technology that they have now that catches every single offside, right? If your pinky finger is offside, then you're going to get called for it. So in the first half, it had to be incredibly frustrating for Argentina to have 3 goals called back. I think that rattled them. And they were called offside 8 times in that half. So that was just an ingenious strategy on the part of Saudi Arabia. That was a brilliant move to say, we're going to run the offside trap. And whereas in the old days, you might get burned because it might not get called, with the new technology, they're never going to miss it, right? So that played a role. And then there are teams like Japan that just exploit their opportunities, few as they are, brilliantly. So Japan, it just took a couple quick counterattacks and they put it in the back of the net. But I agree. I don't think the anomalies are going to last through this tournament. I think that they are partly or largely the result of the timing of this tournament. And I suspect that as the tournament goes on, teams are going to settle in and the talent difference is again going to start making the difference more consistently. But it's made for an exciting tournament, right? It's made for an incredible tournament. Nobody would have dreamed that Saudi Arabia would upset Argentina. Pretty much nobody would have dreamed that Japan would upset Germany. So it's opened up those groups. Those groups are now wide open. There's real pressure on Germany now. So it's made it a really interesting tournament to see what's going to happen next. So for me, it's been fun because it keeps things more interesting.
There's no doubt the Saudi game provided a lot of drama. One of the great defensive performances of the Saudis after they took that lead. They only had 3 quality opportunities all game, and they scored on 2 of the 3. And they gave up over 15 quality opportunities. But there were some like where the defender's just standing in the middle of the goal, the keeper's out, and the defender happened to be exactly where the ball was placed. But a lot of the rest was just pure hustle, and they just timed it perfectly. And the fates and the deities and the gambling gods were on their side, as well as the soccer deities. And like I said, they've declared, it'll be one of the greatest. It is the greatest upset by far in the history of the World Cup. And the greatest performance and victory in arguably any Mideastern game, period, of any of the countries. And we'll see how it goes. And as you point out, a lot of nervousness was a factor, as we saw with the Qataris, who, despite preparing for that first game against Ecuador, were clearly very scared and not scared, but nervous and edgy on the big stage for the first 30 minutes. Didn't settle in until a little bit later. And then you're right, it's a game of inches. Because that's what we saw with Argentina, literally offsides by inches, 3 different on 3 different goals called back, a 4th one that could have been a goal, and it was just like an arm or an elbow. I mean, it was just a tiny part of it. And the same with the Saudis on defense. Often, like Messi's about to score, and when the ball is taken out from underneath him, literally a quarter of a second before he's about to shoot it, or the ball goes right on the post, and if it's just an inch a little bit more the other way, it goes in the goal. It reminded me of the Al Pacino famous speech about American football in any given Sunday, talking about we fight for that inch. We've seen the exact same thing in the World Cup, a game of inches. Nothing, no better indicator of that than the Argentina game, but several others. Lewandowski's penalty kick, one of the great penalty kickers of all time. The famous legendary Mexican goalkeeper Ochoa, getting it just right, just right there to block it away. Lewandowski's so depressed that he did score on it that he forgot he could have got the rebound. His head goes down, and maybe if he takes a proactive action, maybe it's a different outcome for the unlucky Poles in the World Cup of late. But of course, the Mexican fans are thrilled, and they're the ones who apparently were the only ones who travel all the way to Qatar. But any thoughts, at least in mass, of that size and scale? Any thoughts yourself, Cody, on the first 20 or so matches?
Well, one thing I found interesting, the boring 0-0 draw games are kind of back. They've kind of gotten rid of that in past tournaments, past recent tournaments. In Russia, I think that at this stage they only had one 0-0 draw game at this point. We already have 4. And I think that stems to, again, the timing of this tournament, and then having to come right from club play and the lack of cohesion that's there for these teams. So I think, again, that may benefit a lot of these other teams come down the stretch that play together, that have large teammates that play together in these on these other teams in Europe. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that's noted out for me. And then it's kind of sucked watching these teams play so great and not be able to finish. Canada, especially, man, that was really tough to watch. Canada played so great; they really, really dominated that game, and unfortunately couldn't come away with the win. But so those are things I've noticed that have stuck out to me the most so far in this tournament.
That was the other striking thing about that Saudi Arabia team. Most of them played together on the same club team, Al Hilal, in Saudi Arabia. It's like the majority of the starters play together week in and week out on the same club team. So in that case, it really seemed to pay off.
It was interesting who was aggressive and who wasn't. Like the French, despite losing Benzema, were very aggressive. The Australians did not play very defensively. Now that ended up, backfiring on them over time because the talent, showed up. But the same in the English-Iranian game. But neither team played as defensive as they typically do. The Iranians played a little more defensive against Wales, but not as defensive as they have played in past cups, especially with this particular coach. And then they pull off the late win. Whereas some other teams that you expected to be a little more offensively proactive, some of the Central European teams like Serbia, like Croatia, like Poland, play a pretty defensive ball game. Really did not push aggressively. Like the U.S.-England game was a great game because both teams were really trying whenever they could to push it upfield. They were not trying to play defensive possessiveness. They were not trying to do a low block or a mid block that's really a hard line. Like you mentioned, the Saudis were playing a very aggressive offside trap program, not playing a deep line at all. Their line was as far up as they possibly could, try to get to midfield most of the game. And so it's interesting, the teams that you think of as more offensive. Even the Dutch have played a little bit more defensive than I anticipated they would. The Africans have been pretty. On the other hand, the Africans who people thought might play back like they did through a lot of the qualifying rounds in the African Cup. Senegal has been very aggressive. Ghana's been pretty aggressive. That ended up being one of the highest scoring games all after the 65th minute. You went from 0 goals the first 65 to 5 goals in 30 minutes or so. As the Ghanaians actually got into some rhythm with the young talent that they have just now incorporated into the roster. So it's been interesting who has played defensive and who has played proactive. Credit to these smaller programs that usually play uber defensive, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, like Iran, like Tunisia. And they have it. Tunisia, particularly the first half, really tried to take it to them. They had probably one of the most exciting players in the cup. That guy with a huge beard was just, he gets that first block early and he's yelling and screaming and the crowd's going crazy and they're all pumped up and everybody's ready to rock. So, you always have some surprise stars that come out of a World Cup. The team I thought looked the best overall in the first round, even though statistically that edge goes to France over Australia, I would give that edge to the Brazilians. Neymar's got hurt late, but he'll be back for the group stage. but you saw the depth of their talent against a very good quality Serbian team. They dominated a good team. The French, Spain dominating a weak Costa Rica, that's good for them, but it's not as impressive. Same with French dominating a weak Australian team. Both two teams that needed the playoffs to get here, with weak qualifiers even before that. To compare to a tough Serbian team that qualified out of Europe over teams like Italy and Hungary and others, and just dominated by a Brazilian team that is just ready to roll. What was your thoughts of who's been the most impressive through match day one?
So I agree. I agree completely. If you look at the other teams that won big, France, England, Spain, it was all against arguably pretty weak talent, right? So great for them. They played great games. Brazil dominated a really good team. You're exactly right. And when they scored their goals, Serbia was bunkered in all the way back. It was the sort of situation in which other quality teams have not been able to score. But the first goal, Neymar set up brilliantly, and Richarlison finished. And then that scissor kick, almost bicycle kick by Richarlison, an amazing goal. And throughout the game, that's exactly right. Brazil dominated Serbia, and Serbia is a good team. So no doubt about it, Brazil came out firing on all cylinders. And right now, they, to me, look like the best team in the tournament by far. It's hard to tell with France and Spain and even England just how good they're going to be because they haven't played that quality talent. So I agree. Brazil so far looks outstanding. The Netherlands in their first game looked really strong. And then, of course, today, Ecuador gave them a good hard time. So right now, I have to agree. I think it's Brazil that looks better than anyone else. And then, of course, although they're not an elite team, and since we talked about attacking play, Canada, that was just an amazing game. Right from the start, Canada took it to Belgium. This is one of the top couple teams in the world, according to most people. And Canada's pressing high gave Belgium awful fits. They could not handle it. And through most of that game, Canada just dominated Belgium. But yes, among the elite teams, absolutely. I have to say Brazil, hands down, looks like the best team in the tournament.
Yeah, Cody. I mean, I agree. The most impressive individual surprising performance has been the Canadians against the Belgians, for sure. In fact, I went back and looked. At least I haven't found any team, a top 10 team, outperformed by a team not in the top 10 in the World Cup in recent World Cups. Belgium managed to win, but from an expected goal perspective, should have lost by 2, which means that their odds of winning that game. If you simulate the same expected goals and you do it 100 times, they had about a 5% chance to win, and yet they did. And so maybe people missed that. The people who only saw the final result don't realize how competitive, how Canada dominated that game, especially if you look at in play. Your thoughts, Cody, on the most impressive top tier team and the most impressive performance so far?
Yeah, I'm with you guys on Brazil. I think they look like the best team, but again, that's because we don't really know enough about the France and the Spains. But I got to say, Spain broke a record. That's the biggest win total they've won by in a World Cup ever. But yeah, and then Canada, of course, that's just amazing. I mean, that Belgium team, they finished third last World Cup. So I mean, they're a really, really tough team, and a little bit of age since that last World Cup, but still, that was very, very impressive to watch them that. But yeah, I got to give Spain some credit too, getting 7 goals like that, 7-0 winning. That's the biggest differential for them in any World Cup game, and that's kind of impressive in and of itself. Even though they weren't playing a high tier team or a good team at all, but I still look for them to do well, and I think looking at their second game, we might get a better idea of what those teams are gonna look like. We just don't know now.
You look at the first group, Qatar is probably out of it at this point. Even if they won, it's hard to see how they would make it through. Ecuador comes into the final game with 4 points. Netherlands comes in with the final game with 4 points. So that basically means Qatar is out. Senegal did win against Qatar, so if they either a tie or a win, there's certain scenarios where they can go through. We would assume that the Netherlands against Qatar is going to win. so that would give them 7 points. And so really the Senegal-Ecuador game is sizing up as the big one. Any thoughts on that game in match day 3?
Well, so Ecuador probably just needs a tie to go through. So my guess is Ecuador plays as they did through most of qualifying. They will play a defensive style of game and counterattack, because, in part at least, because they only need a tie. That would be my guess. Senegal needs the win. But Senegal, I mean, that's going to be an amazing game because Senegal has got great attacking players. They've shown they can do it. So it's all going to be on that game as to who goes on in the World Cup. So that's going to be an amazing game to watch because those teams are both going to show up and be in it 100%. But I would expect Senegal attacking and Ecuador defending until something happens, right?
Your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I kind of agree. Initially, I thought it was a lock that Ecuador and Netherlands were going to make it through this group, but now it's kind of on Senegal to get that win and see if they can kind of pull up the upset and get through. And that's going to be a really fun game to watch. I'm really excited about that game.
And then the to me at least shocking upset of Wales by the Iranians late finish in that game. And from an expected goal perspective, they outperformed Wales on that side. It was almost like the Welsh had a letdown after that great second half against the Americans. So you go into the final game, England comes in with 4 points. The U.S. comes in with 2 points. The U.S. gets Iran. If the U.S. beats Iran, the U.S. qualifies at this point, because the most points that the Welsh can get are 4. So the U.S. can get 5 and they're through. And then if they beat Iran, Iran's left with 3 points. So for the Welsh, they actually, if they were to pull an upset and beat England, then maybe they get through, but they need either a U.S. Iranian tie or they need an extraordinary goal differential, given England comes in not only with 4 points, but with a +4 goal differential. Mm-hmm. And so if they were to lose to Wales, Wales would then have 4 points, but Wales would need to beat them by more than 4 goals. Actually more than that, I guess, because they're actually -6 Wales coming. I mean, well, effectively -6 coming into this. Yeah. So it looks like all England needs to do is play for the tie, really. Yeah. And if you're England, is that what you do? The U.S. really probably, the U.S. could play for a tie and get through in all likelihood. Well, let me think. No, they couldn't actually, because then I think the Iranians would go through. Yep. So the U.S. needs to win. Yep. What do you think the odds are the U.S. beats Iran? And will the Welsh at least give their fans something to cheer for in the final game against the Three Lions?
Well, the Welsh are definitely going to come out and play against England, right? If they could be a spoiler against England, they'd be happy with that. That would be a win. But yeah, Wales is one of a group of teams in this tournament, like Croatia, like Belgium, whose few elite players are really at the very end of their careers, right? Belgium, except for Kevin De Bruyne, the Belgium back line is like that. Some of Croatia's players, Modric, Perisic, Wales too, Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, a couple others, Joe Allen. Those guys are on their last legs. And against Iran, it really showed up. So it'll be interesting because what Wales has to hope for is a U.S.-Iran tie, which of course is a distinct possibility. And then they would hold their fate in their hands if they could beat England. And they will definitely bring it all. They will bring it all to play. But Iran definitely exposed the weaknesses of that Welsh team. And it has many, many weaknesses. So I would, and boy, the U.S., they played an incredible game today against England. We talked about it a little, but the U.S. today showed that they are a quality, almost elite level team. England's possession in the first half, if you look at possession, you might think England dominated that half, but that was not at all true because England's possession was all the way back in their own third, and they could not figure out what to do to break down the U.S. And then eventually the U.S. really started getting all the quality chances. So all that is to say, I think the U.S. will beat Iran. I think they'll beat Iran and go through, so that no matter what happens with England and Wales, and I would expect England gets a win or a tie, because I just don't think Wales is going to have what it takes. So that's what I would guess, is that England and the U.S. are going to go through.
Yeah, because now I look at it again, because Iran enters this with a -2 goal differential because of all those goals. So they need to win. I was a little nervous if they could just get away with a draw, they would play uber defensive, and that has given the U.S. some trouble. Those low block, 5-man across kind of things, but they're going to have to stay offensively aggressive because a tie does them in. And I think the U.S. will stay offensive. I think that's just Beerhalter's style, good, bad, or otherwise. Your thoughts, Cody, on those final matches?
I think that speed in the U.S. is going to be too much for Iran. I mean, you saw that today against England. That was impressive how much faster those guys are. But yeah, I think for Wales, it was tough watching it. They really got dominated in that first half in the U.S. And there's a substitution that Kiefer Moore came in and kind of helped get back control of that game. Even though it took that Gareth Bale penalty kick to really put it over the edge. But I still see the U.S. and England pretty easily coming out of this group. I think so, with an easy win by the U.S. over Iran.
So we're recording this on Friday night. Saturday, there's really 2 big games up that I think a lot of people are paying attention to. But the first one will be, can Argentina bounce back? This is Lionel Messi's likely final World Cup, or at least in form. I mean, he could make it one last go, but most people see this as his cup to win or lose. And he gets the one and only Mexico, which has been a tough, resilient team. There's already been fights between Mexican and Argentinian fans for making fun of the fact that Ronaldo scored in front of Messi's sign and stuff like that. A lot of criticism back home in Argentina, though, again, if you looked at it statistically, Argentina dominated the Saudis more than the England dominated Iran.
Yeah.
It was, in fact, the second most dominant performance in the Cup so far. It just didn't happen to translate on the field. So I don't know if the Argentines are really in trouble. But the Mexico, I mean, they had the Poles, I guess, decided to stay home. Whatever the dynamic was, that was as the announcer said, that felt like a home game for Mexico. Yeah. And especially after Ochoa made that save of Lewandowski, who I think he made 13 out of 14 penalty kicks in qualifying coming into this. And, Ochoa blocks him. And it wasn't like Lewandowski, just put it over the bar or something. Right. You could hear that crowd go absolutely berserk. Now, obviously, the Saudis have a good home field. They're going to be playing the Poles on Saturday. But and then, of course, the French play their nemesis, Denmark. Denmark has given them nightmares of late. So any thoughts on the French, Denmark, and does Messi bounce back for the Argentines, or does Mexico harass him once more to potentially knock the Argentines out of the tournament early?
It's funny. Historically, in the Cup, Mexico plays much better against European teams than they do against Latin American teams. They really struggle against Latin American teams. So in the last Cup, right, they pulled the huge win over Germany, but then they get knocked out by a Latin American team. So, my guess, and that's what happened with Mexico and Poland. El Tri dominated possession, and they looked really good doing it. But at the end of the day, Poland had better expected goals than Mexico did. Mexico couldn't translate it into great opportunities. And that was against a Poland team that wasn't going to dominate possession against them. My guess is that Argentina bounces back and that Mexico struggles against a great Latin American team like they often do. So I think Argentina will bounce back. I think they'll win that game. It was shocking when Lewandowski didn't make that penalty kick. Never missed a penalty kick for his national team ever until then. So, but yeah, I think that Argentina bounces back and beats Mexico. The France-Denmark game, that will be really interesting, especially without Benzema playing for France, and with Denmark having had their number at times in recent months. I think that'll be an interesting game to watch. I think it'll tell us who France really is. I think in that game we'll find out, is this French team back and for real, or are they struggling? So I don't know. I don't know how to predict that one. Denmark has trouble finishing up front. So even when they dominate play and get good opportunities, they struggle to capitalize on them. That's not having a really high quality striker is one of their weaknesses. But I don't know how to pick that one.
Cody?
Yeah. I'm kind of in the same spot there. Now, Argentina and Mexico. I think Argentina will have a little bit more drive, as there was already a fight between the fans of Mexico and Argentina because the Mexican fans were taking shots at Messi, saying Messi sucks and this and that. Not that they'll need that extra drive, because I think Argentina does bounce back and beat Mexico in this game. As far as France goes, coming in, I thought they were legit possibilities. This is a few weeks before the Cup. I thought there were legit possibilities to repeat and win this whole thing again. But as we drew closer, just different things started, losing players and things of that nature started to slip away. I really don't know where to put this team, and I'm with Gordon. I think this is really going to let us know where France is at in this tournament and how well they can or can't do in this tournament.
Yeah, the guy you identified as being good for Mexico was definitely their best player in the first game, Gordon. That he was impressive.
Yep. Yeah, Chucky Lozano. He and Hector Herrera both came up with Pachuca, came up together in that great academy at Pachuca. And he is a great player, just a phenomenal player, great speed and agility, great ball control. So the more opportunities they can get for him, the better their chances of pulling an upset. There's no doubt about it. If they can get him the ball, their chances go up considerably.
Now, Sunday has 3 really good matches. It starts off with Japan and Costa Rica, but then you get Belgium against Morocco, or at least 3 matches I'm very interested. Croatia against Canada, and then Spain against Germany, which has become huge now for Germany.
Yep.
To at least get a draw. They really kind of need a bounce back win. They can't go out in the first round and back-to-back cups. That's going to drive their fans nuts. The Moroccans played pretty decently, more defensive oriented. Didn't get lots of quality opportunities, but were decent in the first round. As we noted, the Belgians were quite frankly totally outplayed and got lucked into a win. So, I'm curious to see whether the Moroccans can replicate some aspects of what Canada did with just a comparable, better outcome on the scoreboard. The Croatia against Canada, can Canada keep repeating this? This is an overachieving team from their qualifications. They play a style that's fun and engaging. They got key talent on both sides of the ball. They showed that in tremendous amounts against Belgium. Can they maintain that against a Croatian team that kind of underperformed first game out? And then Spain, I think Costa Rica's expected goals was like 0.1 or something. I mean, they couldn't even get a shot off. Now, it wasn't clear how much the Costa Ricans just kind of fell apart once it got to a certain lead.
Yeah.
But, this is a behemoth matchup between 2 powerhouse European teams, 2 of the teams that have won 2 of the last 3 World Cups, and a German team that's reeling off a devastating last-second or late loss to Japan. So thoughts on those 3 matchups: Belgium, Morocco, Croatia, Canada, and Spain and Germany.
So I'll start with the last one, Spain and Germany. I think Spain is going to be feeling the blitzkrieg. I mean, I think I would not want to be Spain going into that game with Germany after Germany's loss in that opening game. Germany's going to bring it in a big, big way. And so I think Spain is going to face a German team like they haven't seen before, because that team is going to be as motivated as you can imagine. I would pick Germany to win that game. We'll see what happens, but I think Germany will come back with a vengeance. But it'll be interesting because it will depend on just how good Spain is. We'll find out just how good they are. But Germany's going to be playing like Spain would not have expected before. The Canada-Croatia game will be really interesting because Croatia has some aging players, just like Belgium did. And Canada, of course, young, athletic, strong, fast. They hit Belgium hard. And now the Belgian back line is where they're aging the most. And that's why they struggled the most in a way. But in principle, Canada could do the very same thing to Croatia And some of those aging Croatian players might really be under the gun. I think Croatia is better than Belgium right now. So I think Canada will have a harder time doing it against Croatia. But it's going to be interesting to watch because that Canadian team is the real deal. They're really, really good. And then let's see, our third one is
Belgium, Morocco.
Yes, good. I definitely think Belgium is vulnerable. I think they're very vulnerable. I think Morocco could beat Belgium. Canada played a great game against Belgium, but the fact that they dominated them, and they completely dominated them for most of the game, Belgium couldn't possess the ball. Belgium always possesses the ball against anybody they play against. So that Belgian team, I think, is in trouble. I think that back line, having aged as much as they have, is showing up. And then the talent, again, in the midfield, players like Axel Witsel, and up front, Eden Hazard, not being the same Eden Hazard anymore. I think that Belgian team is extremely vulnerable, and I wouldn't be surprised if Morocco beat them. I think Morocco could beat Belgium. I don't think the Canada game was a fluke. So I think Morocco could beat Belgium. I think Canada could tie Croatia. I wouldn't be surprised. And I would bet on Germany to beat Spain. I think Germany is just going to be so motivated. And that team has been playing so well up until now. In the game with Japan, what happened in part, of course, was Germany scored in the first half. And then you could just tell from watching, the Germans totally relaxed. They laid back. They started possessing the ball. When they got opportunities, they were even sort of lackadaisical in how they took the opportunities. They just had no sense of urgency anymore. And then, of course, it's late in the game. I think it's the 75th minute when Japan strikes and hits them, and they're shocked. And then Japan does it again. But that is in part due to the fact that Germany sort of sat back a bit and lost a sense of urgency. So I think that team is still an elite team, and I think Spain is going to feel the full force of it. That would be my bet.
Thoughts, Cody? I mean, coming into the tournament, the Spain-Germany game was circled as the most interesting game of the round-robin round of matches.
Yeah, I had Spain winning all of this early on, but they don't have to win this one to win it all. But Germany's really playing with a lot of pressure. They almost have to beat Spain, because Japan's going to probably beat Costa Rica, so they almost have to beat Spain to move on out of this group, and that's going to be a tough chore to do because I think this is a really good Spain team. But I do see them winning this game and being able to sneak out of this group. I'm not so sure that Canada can beat Croatia, but if they play the way they played against Belgium, I think they can play against anybody in this tournament almost, man. It was so much fun to watch, and I really look forward to watching it again. But I think Gordon's right on that. That age is really starting to show for that Belgium team. They're not quite as good as they were in this last tournament.
So the Moroccans are a live dog, you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then you have on Monday, Cameroon starts out against Serbia. South Korea against Ghana, Brazil against Switzerland without Neymar for that game, and Portugal against Uruguay. Uruguay back-to-back early World Cup champs in the sport for a place with small population, has maintained and sustained that history, though not a spectacular first game out of the box. So any thoughts about some of those matches? I think probably the most watched one will be Brazil and Switzerland, but maybe as interesting will be Portugal and Uruguay.
Good. If we start with Brazil and Switzerland, Switzerland always manages to give countries like Brazil a hard time. They play a fairly conservative game. They don't make a lot of mistakes. So they managed to stay in games like that for a long time. Back in the 2010 World Cup, Switzerland actually beat Spain in Spain's opening game, even though Spain went on to win the World Cup in 2010. So I think Switzerland will give Brazil a hard time. Brazil is playing so well, I still think Brazil will win that game. But I think it could be close because Switzerland just has the quality talent and the discipline to hold even teams like Brazil in check for a while. So that'll be an interesting game to watch because I think Switzerland will keep it a close game. Portugal and Uruguay, that will be an interesting game. Portugal was a mixed bag against Ghana. Early on, you can definitely tell Cristiano Ronaldo is rusty, both old and a bit rusty. So the first time he gets the ball, his touch is not great. It goes way too far away from him, or else he puts that right in the back of the net. On the header, shortly after that, Cristiano Ronaldo a couple of years ago would have put that right in the back of the net. So eventually he played well, but he's definitely rusty. Hasn't been playing a lot for Manchester United. The Portugal midfield played well. I thought they showed up and that team looked good. By contrast, Uruguay, again, some of the front players, Darwin, was hit or miss, could have finished a little better, and there were chemistry issues there. So I would pick Portugal. I think Portugal's probably, I think they're fine-tuning things, but I suspect they come out and play well and beat Uruguay. Those two, that's where I'd go, I think.
And I think, the Cameroon, Serbia, South Korea, Ghana matches, that if either one of those teams are going to advance, they need to win that game.
That's right.
And I think that will be interesting to see. I'm cheering on the Ghana team. I'd like to see them make a run. I like both the Serbian side and the Cameroonian side. I think Serbs have a little more talent, so I'm more likely to go forward. Your thoughts, Cody?
As far as those teams go, I don't see either of the African teams making it out of those groups. But they're going to have to make a push if they're going to try. That's the time to do it. I can't really say anything different than what Gordon kind of nailed it on the spot with those other two games. I think Swiss are going to give Brazil trouble. It'll be a real fun game to watch, and that Brazil team is still probably the most talented team in this cup. And I think Portugal, again, the cohesion there is going to be the difference maker, and Portugal is going to come out with a win there.
When we go to some of the who is likely still to advance. You have certain teams that are sort of, are going to be up against it. We talked about already Group A and Group B. We get to Group C. You talk again. I still think it's the French and the Danes who advance. And then Group D, I think Argentina does bounce back. And I still lean slightly towards Poland to advance over Mexico, but I think that's going to be very, very tight. It's going to depend on, I think it will be mostly depend on, I think Poland gets a bit of a break in that they play Argentina in game 3 rather than match day 2, where they might catch the full rage of the Argentines, as I think Mexico will. And then the other aspect is the Poles need to bounce. They're going to catch the Saudis coming off the high of upsetting the Argentines, and they may catch them in the right place. And we'll see if that offsides trap, if they continue to employ it, does it work? Usually that offside trap is a great scheme when a team doesn't see it coming. When a team's had 3 or 4 days, does it work? Typically, there's a reason why most teams have gone away from it. I think you're right that the video utility may have changed the nature of offside strategies, but historically it's been a tough system to sustain because teams adjust to it well. They learn where and when. They start to run laterally more to get their advantage. Rather than going north-south, which they can be inclined to do and invited to do by an offside trap. So thoughts on, do you see anybody but the French or the Danes coming out of that group, such as the Aussies or the Tunisians, surprising? And do you see Argentina making it out despite their first loss? And what about the Poles or Mexico? Or do the Saudis go forward?
I agree. I think that, first of all, you're right. Mexico is going to feel the brunt of Argentina in a way that Poland won't in the third game. And I agree that the offside trap is a one-off gimmick that's brilliant when nobody sees it coming. But once you've done it, I agree, it's not going to work against Poland the second time when Saudi Arabia does it, because Poland will know it's coming. They'll time their runs carefully and you can beat it. So I agree. It only worked in the first game against Argentina because nobody saw it coming, that together with the new technology. But I agree. I still lean towards Poland. It'll be tough and it'll be close, but I'm inclined to think that Argentina bounces back because I think they'll beat Mexico and then they'll do what they have to in game 3 to get through. So I think Argentina will bounce back. And I lean towards Poland because I think by the time Poland plays Argentina, Argentina won't have the same urgency that they did before. And I think Poland will beat Saudi Arabia. So I'm inclined to agree that I think Argentina and probably Poland come out of that group. That's right. I still think France and Denmark come out of their group, but it could be interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Tunisia could, pull an upset and surprise people. I don't think Australia is going to. Australia just doesn't have the talent. But I think Tunisia could surprise people. We'll see.
Yeah, I think especially for the Danes, I think, doing well against the French, getting a draw, especially keeping the goal differential down will be important because of for teams that if they win the first game, they advance 80% of the time. If they draw, they advance a little more than 50% of the time. And so that would favor slightly favor the Danes and strongly favor the French. It would disfavor the Argentines, but the assumption is that their talent will shown through like it did in the first game, and that luck will catch up with them and not be up against them. And I kind of lean that direction myself. What do you think, Cody?
I think that the French and the Danes both are going to walk out of the group of relative ease. I don't think Tunisia has a chance either, personally. As far as that other group, this Argentina-Mexico game is really going to give us a lot. And see, whatever happens in that game is going to really tell us the rest of this group, in my opinion. But I see it playing out where the Poles and the Argentines make it. But man, if Mexico makes a good play and draws against Argentina somehow, man, it's going to shake that group up a lot.
Oh, definitely. And if the Poles don't beat the Saudis, I think they're DOA.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. I want to add quickly, in the last World Cup, I watched in downtown Rochester with a Mexican composer and his wife, a Mexican composer who teaches composition at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester. And he was telling me about how Latin American countries, his feeling was, really look down on Mexico. They sort of look down through their nose on Mexico, the Brazilians, the Argentines. So he suggested to me that Mexico always wants to beat those countries just really badly. So it'd be interesting if Mexico is really extra motivated playing Argentina, if that makes a difference. I don't know.
My brother-in-law is Mexican and from Mexico, deep accent, broken English speaking Mexican, and big Cruz Azul fan and loves soccer. And but that is an absolute fact, I would say, about Mexico, from what he's told me.
And I'm very curious to see, both with Mexico and with Denmark, can they get perform goal finishers? Because that's what they've lacked leading up to the tournament. That was what, and Mexico had bad luck with injuries. And it's what they didn't show in the first game, that player that can finish. That has that natural instinct. Now we get to the next group, and we have Canada, Morocco, Croatia, Belgium. Belgium didn't look good, but got the 3 points out of the first game. Croatia and Morocco didn't do much against each other. It seems to me this is a wide open group. Canada is not really a true 4 seed. They're more like a 3 seed that, because of their history, is put as a 4 seed, but not their qualifying performance, not their performance in the first game, not their capabilities, not their young talent or athleticism. Morocco's had some bad breaks with injuries themselves, but wasn't real offensively assertive. Was happy to take the draw against Croatia early. They play Canada in the last matchup, and then Croatia, of course, plays Belgium in the last matchup. And in Belgium and Croatia, as you know, 2 aging teams. Which 2 teams do you think advance out of that group?
Boy, I think this one is wide open. I think that's exactly right. After what Canada showed in their opening game against Belgium, and the fact that Croatia and Morocco were both tepid, but especially Croatia, right? They had some solid opportunities, but they couldn't finish. They couldn't capitalize them. So I think this group is wide open. I would favor Croatia to go through for sure, but I think Belgium versus Canada versus Morocco is wide open. I think any one of those teams alongside Croatia could still go through. Croatia still has the talent and the recent run of play to suggest to me that whatever happens when they play Canada, I think Croatia's likely to pull it out and get through the group. But I think that it's wide open as to which of the other three goes through. I think Belgium's really vulnerable and in trouble. And I think either Canada or Morocco could steal that second spot. So I agree that this might be the most interesting group in the Cup right now because it really seems wide open. And you're exactly right. There isn't a 4 in this group. There really isn't. Morocco and Canada are both strong teams. They're different, but they're very strong teams. So this is, and Croatia and Belgium, neither one is a France or a Spain or a Germany or a Brazil, right? So that group is really interesting and somewhat wide open.
Yeah, I think it will be wide open still on match day 3. I don't think any of these teams will be out of it or a lock going into match day 3. Your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's just kind of an unknown right now. And I think that's exactly how it's going to turn out in day 3. I tell you, I'm really hoping for Canada to make it out of this group, though. Because to me, they've been the most fun team to watch so far in the Cup.
Yeah, they'd be a great Cinderella to get to the round of 16.
Yep.
As we get to the next group, this is the wide open group. Germany, Costa Rica, Japan, and Spain. I think Costa Rica's out, but it's 3 ways between Germany, Japan, and Spain. We mentioned how important that second game is for Germany against Spain. Does Germany find a way back, or do they go out in the first round of a second World Cup back to back?
They definitely have got a hard road now because they've got to get a positive result against Spain. And as Cody said, they really need a win. But this is Spain, and this Spain team is playing well. So Germany is in trouble. I still think that they will pull it out, but they have the biggest mountain to climb. There's no doubt about it. I think Japan is still dangerous. Now that Japan has pulled a big upset against Germany, it's probably going to be harder for them to do it again against Spain. But from the beginning, I said I thought this Japan team was dangerous. And I think they still are. Some of their players like Daiki Kamada didn't even play as well as he can in that game against Germany. Some other Japanese players stepped up and had big games. But Kamada is just a top shelf player for Eintracht Frankfurt. So I think Japan is going to be a real threat all the way through. And so this group is going to be interesting, especially if Germany does pull it out and beat Spain, and I still think they will, then I think Spain could be vulnerable on day 3 against Japan. I think, especially because, Spain likes to possess the ball and they don't get a whole lot of opportunities usually. They finish a pretty high percentage of them, but they don't get a whole lot of opportunities. Japan is happy to sit back and then hit you on the counter. And as we saw against Germany, they don't miss opportunities when they get them on the counter usually. So yeah, I think that that group's going to be interesting right through day 3 as well.
Yeah, the other thing that could really hurt Germany is if Japan wins against Costa Rica with 6 points, they're through. And so they may not care too much about the last game against Spain. Right. So then Spain could have its 6 points, and and so then you would have Germany would have to have beaten Spain, beat Costa Rica, and work on goal differential. They're not going to outdo Spain on goal differential when they have +7 against Costa Rica. So they need something. They would really love the Costa Ricans to upset Japan. Is the short answer, or at least draw them so that they're not behind. Your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, I think they're hoping for all kinds of scenarios in that regard, but they're focused on the win in Spain because that's what they need the most right now. And I do think they'll get that, and I do think they'll be able to push through. But Japan's been really impressive, and this is the second back-to-back Cup now that they've had big underdog wins, because they beat Colombia, I think, in 2018. They've been a lot of fun to watch, and it'd be kind of fun, a little Cinderella story for them to move on too. But I really do expect Germany to get the win, and Germany and Spain to somehow manage to make it out of this group.
Well, especially if Japan advances out of the group that had Germany and Spain in it. I mean, that would shock a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we get to the final 2 groups. We have Ghana and Uruguay, South Korea, Portugal, Cameroon, Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland playing on the final day of the first round of matches. What do you think are you look at, I mean, I think Brazil is definitely going to advance. And I don't see Cameroon as much of a shot given what we've seen from them coming in and what we've seen from them in the tournament. They played decent against Switzerland, but didn't show a lot of flair. I think that comes down to Serbia and the Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then Ghanaians did show some flair, particularly in the second half against the Portuguese. Uruguay and South Korea, they're going to harass you and make life difficult. Son was able to play, I mean, with the mask and everything, but he had an opportunity or two. They're a live dog in pretty much any match, as they have been ever since the 2002 World Cup. And so I think Portugal is going to go through. That was a good win against Ghana. They needed it. I think that puts them in the driver's seat. And then the question is, who's going to be number two? And I could see it being any of these three teams, even though Uruguay is the strong favorite to advance. I could easily see the Ghanaians or the South Koreans pulling the upset. Whereas in the other match, I lean a little bit towards Serbia. I think that against over Switzerland, but that's very tight as I see it between those two.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Gordon?
I agree. I'm inclined to think, Ghana looked really good because Ghana faced a Portugal team that, despite Cristiano Ronaldo's being a little rusty, the rest of that Portugal team played extremely well. They played a good game. They were playing well together. And that Ghana team is feisty too. They never backed down. They never gave up. They kept coming back. So, and they scored goals, right? So I think Ghana has a real shot in that group. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. I almost think they might have a shot, given how well they played against Portugal. Given that Uruguay was one of the teams where I thought the chemistry looked a little off. There were passes that were a little off. And so given the way those teams have looked, I think Ghana has a real shot there. South Korea, that's right. They played well, but I just don't think that, especially with Son playing a bit injured and a bit off, and you can tell the difference, I don't know that Korea is going to be able to do it. Serbia and Switzerland, that's going to be really interesting because it'll be close. I agree. I think Serbia still has the edge. They were playing against a Brazil team that was in top form. So we didn't get to see, especially the front line for Serbia, where they're so strong, Vlahovic and Mitrovic and Tadic right behind them. We didn't get to see those guys do much because they couldn't get the ball very much. Against Switzerland, they'll get the ball more. So I give Serbia the edge, but that's going to be close, really close. And it's going to be interesting to watch because, again, in the last World Cup, Switzerland knocked Serbia out. And so Serbia has a chance at revenge and to move on for the first time. So I think they have the edge, but it's going to be really close.
I think the last match day for round one is looking interesting. Yeah. You start off with Ghana and Uruguay and finish with Serbia, Switzerland. What do you think, Cody?
I was saying that I'm not sure that Serbia gets that retribution they're looking for. I think Switzerland and Brazil make it out of that group. And then as far as Group H is concerned, I think Gordon was right with that chemistry looked a little off with Uruguay. Cohesion wasn't there, and I think that's going to be the difference maker in the Portugal-Uruguay game, giving Portugal the win, which is really going to open the door pretty heavily for South Korea or Ghana to pull the upset there. Because I had originally Portugal and Uruguay moving on. It's not so certain to me anymore.
Yeah, I think the games, and then to wrap up, looking forward to most through the rest of the matches. On Saturday, France and Denmark, just because the Danes have given the French such trouble. And then definitely Argentina, Mexico. How well does Argentina bounce back? Then the day after that, I like all the matches, but particularly the latter ones, Croatia, Canada, because of how well Canada played. Can they replicate it? And then Spain, Germany, because of what's now at stake in that game that wasn't anticipated for the big matchup early. Then Portugal and Uruguay. If Uruguay is going to advance, they need to at least draw in that game, in my view. Otherwise, I think they're showing signs of not playing up to their potential, which they really didn't do in the first game either. Then Iran US is going to be great. And I think Wales England's always, because of the rivalry between them, will be a fun match. And then you finish with some interesting games. I think Canada Morocco could have a potential consequence. Croatia Belgium, particularly in that group, can have consequence. And then Ghana and Uruguay and Serbia, Switzerland all look interesting as well. So there's good matchups really on each day, and some real big ones, more so than we even anticipated, particularly Argentina, Mexico, and Germany, Spain in this round to go. What matches are you looking forward to the most, Gordon?
Definitely Germany, Spain, because Germany's up against the wall, and those are both elite teams. Mexico, Argentina, because Argentina's up against the wall, but El Tri played really well in the first game. Those are both going to be fantastic games to watch. Serbia and Switzerland, because of the revenge backstory. And then France and Denmark, to see what the truth is about this France team, to find out, and with Denmark too. And then England and Wales, to see what Wales can do against their old enemy. But really, Argentina, Mexico, Germany, Spain, those are big, big games for big, big teams.
Your thoughts, Cody?
Yeah, no, absolutely the same. The only one I'd add there would be Canada. Anytime they're going to play this cup, I'm really interested to see them play. And I was so excited. That's my favorite game so far this cup has been that Canada game. I love watching them play. If they can play like that throughout this, I think they got a real shot at moving through. So I'm excited for that and excited to watch them play next week.
I would love to see the Canadians advance. Would of course always love love the Americans to advance. Of course, the elite team is Brazil so far. Argentina statistically has actually played very well despite losing that first matchup, but the luck was not on their side. They need to reverse the course of events fast in order to be able to even advance and be in a position to win the cup. The French and the Spanish look good early. Germans not so much. We'll see what kind of spine the Germans have, and can they bounce back. It's been a fun cup, a wild cup, a crazy cup. I think we'll still see some wild and fun and some crazy games. I'm hoping some of the underdogs, like the Ghanaians, like the Canadians, like some other ones, really shine through. Maybe a Tunisia, maybe a Morocco, maybe somebody like that, pull a shocker. It would be nice to see that as well as to see a couple of teams advance that nobody expected. It would be amazing if the Saudis advance, which they can do if they play a good second game against the Poles. They just simply draw. They're in a great position to potentially advance, which would be impressive to see. I'm hoping Qatar maybe has a good final third game. We'll see how that goes. I mean, it's a tough matchup in their third game, but we'll see. As well as some of because it's going to be the Netherlands, but the Netherlands, maybe feeling comfortable and confident. We'll see. But and then teams, that have missing links, like to some degree, Netherlands weren't great at finishing. The Danes weren't great at finishing. As some of the other teams we've mentioned, the Mexican team, it wasn't great at finishing. Can they get that turned around for these elite teams? Can a team like Japan advance when nobody thought against two elite teams in their group? So it's been a fun World Cup. Will continue to be. We'll come back on a weekly basis to both recap, review, and preview, and hope you continue to remember to like, share, and subscribe here at Sports Wars, as well as if you want free picks, free ideas, free contributions, or subscriber-based picks, you can go to sportspicks.locals.com, where you get the best sports handicapping value anywhere. You get a range of free picks from a range of commentators. You get some subscriber-only picks. Subscriber-only picks have a profit rate of return of 70% this year, more than doubled your money last year. It is the best value in sports handicapping, bar none. So remember to like, share, and subscribe here at Sports Wars. And if you like this kind of content, join us over at Sports Picks. You can do it for free if you want, or if you want to become a subscriber, you can do that too. Until then, and until next week, continue to enjoy the great World Cup that only comes around once every 4 years. And we'll continue to see wild and fun games, crazy upsets, and some good teams advance and put on great performances. And some stars yet to be seen and uncovered and discovered here in Qatar. Thanks, everybody.